Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In this lecture, we are going to discuss a very important consideration in any research, the research ethics and the ethical approval. In order to conduct any research, you have to get approvals for your study. Tamam? The ethical approval is a very important step that must be done after developing the proposal in order to start your research. What are research ethics? What do we mean by research ethics? يعني أخلاقيات البحث دي يعني شنو؟ They are the rules set to protect the participants' rights, either if they were humans or if they were animals. They have rights that need to be protected. Okay? Protected through rules. These rules are the ethics that governs the ethical approval, or يعني based on those rules your research is either accepted ethically or not accepted. Most importantly, the benefits of the research must outweigh the risks. This is a basic thing. If the risks are more than the benefits, this research is definitely unethical, because it involves more harm than benefit. So it's most importantly that the benefits must outweigh the risks. In order to conduct a research, you must get the ethical approval first. Just like we just said, after we develop our proposal, we get the ethical approval in order to conduct our study in the participants. It's done through ethics committee. The ethical approval is granted from an ethical committee called IRB. IRB meaning Institutional Review Board, and many organizations have IRBs اللي هم the board that reviews the proposals for any ethical consideration. Okay, in the University of Khartoum we have an IRB, in the Faculty of Medicine تقريبا, and in the Ministry of Health we have an IRB, and in many facilities. IRB consists of members of different background. We said that IRB is an institutional review board. This board is formed out of members. These members have different backgrounds. تمام؟ يعني في of these members, some are concerned with or specialized in the research ethics and in the study design and research methodology in general. But one of the members is just a community member to see the perspective of community for your study. تمام؟ يعني هو composed of different members with different backgrounds. طيب, history and development of research ethics. Why did we do these rules, or why do we have to get the ethical clearance before starting any study? لأنه in the history we had incidents of unethical researches and there were no rules to govern them. ما كان في IRB ولا ethical consideration as a part of the study أو as a necessity in order to start any study. تمام؟ يلا after يعني many unethical researches أو many incidents وكده حصل development of these research ethics. We had the Nuremberg Code in 1948. This code اللي هو زي rule contained the following 2 points. أنه the subjects should give informed voluntary consent. يعني you should ask the participants to either accept or reject the participation in your study. This is called informed voluntary consent. تمام. And the second point was the benefits of research must outweigh the risk. تمام. In 1964, after this number code, we had the Declaration of Helsinki in 1964. تمام. The Declaration of Helsinki contained the following. It governs the international research ethics. تمام. It's an international declaration. Defines the rule for research combined with clinical care. لأنه most يعني the ethically violated researches were the clinically related researches لأن هي دي بتكون direct to the subjects أو humans. And the non-therapeutic research يعني برضو non-therapeutic research ما معناته should skip the ethical approval. No. تمام. Basis for good clinical practices used today يعني the base of all the good clinical practice today was originated after the Declaration of Helsinki. طيب we said that the IRB اللي هو the entity أو the institution أو the board that gives the ethical approval is composed of members. At least 5 members are needed in the committee or in the IRB. The chairperson تمام و the scientific members و the non-scientific members و person from the general population and practitioner. تمام. يعني the IRB composed of different members just like we said from different backgrounds, scientific, non-scientific, practitioners, community-based members and so on. Okay. What does the ethics committee do? خلاص نحنا we gathered the members وخلاص عرفنا انه في institution او في entity كده concerned with ethics اسمها ال IRB. تمام. و formed out of many members from different backgrounds. طيب وهم بيجتمعوا in a committee أو as a committee to decide whether to approve or reject or whatever their ethical decision is. تمام. طيب what does this ethics committee do? They revise the research. ما انت بتقدم لهم proposal just like we said we submit a proposal for the ethical approval of the study and برضو for funding if we want funding. طيب بتقوم انت تقدم لهم your proposal. What do? They revise the research proposal and consider all perspectives that might affect the participants. لأنه قلنا هم ذاتهم from different backgrounds. كل زول من الباكجراوند بتاعته بيوري أنه if it's يعني مثلا useful or not, the risks or the harms are يعني minor or major and so on. This includes considerations of the racial and cultural issues the sensitivity of the research issue such as the community attitudes. يعني they assess the research in every way. عشان كده قلنا هم different members: scientific way, the non-scientific way, the community-based perspective, the practice way. يعني they assess the research from all its perspectives. They have one aim: to protect the rights and the welfare of the research subjects. في الآخر, after considering all these aspects, their main aim هو to protect the participants. تمام. IRB has 3 levels of review depending on the level of risk on the human subject. These 3 levels are full board review, or the expedited review, or the exemption from full review based on the risk كده assumed for the participants. The research might either get a full review committee or an expedited review committee or an exemption from full review. طيب نشوف each level of those. The full board review. This is done to research that involves risk to participants. يعني بيكون في direct risk to the participants, such as clinical trials. لأنه clinical trials دي انت بتدي participants ديل حاجة either new medication or either a placebo or يعني any intervention. تمام. فالحاجة دي direct harm to the patient، فيها direct harm to the patient أو في risk. تمام. Such studies needs full board review. لأنه are يعني have the most أو the highest risk to the participants. زي ما قلنا as the clinical trials or any research that might involve more than the minimal risk to the subjects. The review for such studies usually takes months to get the approval، لأنه they will revise this study in every aspect زي ما قلنا socially و scientifically and outweigh the risks and benefits، وشوفوا أنه هل فعلا the benefits outweigh the risks or not. يعني they study your study in order to get to a decision whether to approve it or reject it. For example, if I have a study about a new COVID-19 vaccine trial on healthcare workers at Khartoum state. أنا عندي والله I developed a new vaccine وجربته في الراتس مثلا وأي وسمح وأي شيء، لكن داير أجي أجربه في humans. تمام. You have to get ethical approval with a full board review in order to conduct such study. تمام. بعد ذاك البورد is either to accept or reject your proposal. لو حسوا بأنه الريسك أعلى من البنفيت your study might get rejected. وحتى لو your study هي في phase 1 trial for example on rats برضو you get an ethical approval to conduct such study، يعني ما بس on humans. تمام. لكن the full board review دايما بيكون for studies that might يعني have some direct risk to the participants. تمام. اللي هم دايما humans. طيب the expedited review. طيب expedited review ده درجة أخف من the full board review. This is done for researches that involves minimal risks to the subjects. تمام. Minimal risks means what? That the risks are not more than the usual daily life risks. Also, any kind of more than minimum harm is included, whether it's emotional or physical or so and so on. تمام. ما في direct harm لكن في risk. تمام. والريسك حتى لو هو low risk برضو should get reviewed، وبعد ذاك هم بيحددوا whether to accept or reject your study, and this review usually takes weeks. For example, sputum swab to identify the mucosal bacteria colonies among dental patients in Khartoum state مثلا. طيب they will assess is there any risk or any harm to these patients. طيب ما في intervention، ما في حاجة انت you will give to the patients أو to the participants، لكن still there is a risk لأنك انت عايز تاخد منهم حاجة. يلا هنا مثلا this study أنا عايز أشيل sputum sample، ممكن في sputum sample دي انت مثلا تجرحه تسلخه or any risk حتى لو minimal. This requires an expedited review in order to give you the approval. ما بس سايب تقول خلاص يا أخي الحاجة دي ما هتأذي العيانين، في شيء أعمله براي. طيب the exemption from full review أنه ده إعفاء من الفول review. ده 200. when do you get exemption from full review? This means approving the research without the need for full review. This is done when the research involves no harm to the subjects at all. يعني there is no physical or emotional or social harm to the participants. تمام. No identity revealing is involved لأنه this is an emotional and social harm, and this is the most important thing in the research. You never collect data from participants with identifiers، يعني ما بتشيل منهم لا their names ولا their phone numbers ولا أي identifier that might link to them. بتجمع your data through codes، بتدي أي patient a code. تمام. to protect their identity لأنه this is طوال a direct risk. okay. examples of such researches: the research done to assess non-humans, for example assessment of educational programs of schools for example. دي ما فيها أي harm للpatient أو للparticipants لأنك أنت تقدر تشيل والله من كل school educational program الشغالين بيه. تمام. in this case you will have an exemption from full review، لكن طبعا برضو you submit your study for the IRB وهو اللي بيديك exemption أو ممكن يقول لك خلاص you can proceed. تمام. برضو for example the observational research that involves no harm to the subjects and available for publicity. مثلا the reports of COVID-19 cases published by the Ministry of Health for example. The public records already موجودة أو published in a website داري يعمل منها study. تمام. This has no harm to the patients لأنه ما فيها أي identity لأي patients وهي عبارة عن reports already available for publicity. You submit such proposal and you usually will get an exemption from full review. هراجع لك يمكن a single member or something and you will get your approval يعني quickly, not like the full board review or كده. Research is done from medical records without mentioning the identity of the participants. دي برضو لما نقول I will not reveal any identity وأنا أصلا this study I will take it from the medical records of the participants، معناته كده هيكون no risk or no harm to the patient، ما هيكون في exposure للidentity بتاعته وما في أي sample هشيله منه أو أي شيء. أنا I will just study the records. خلاص انت you submit your proposal for the IRB and هم based on your study will decide whether to give you exemption from full board review أو يعني يدوك approval quickly. تمام؟ يعني الكوميتيز دي والليفلز بتاعتهم دي depend on the harm that can occur to the participants. تمام؟ This usually takes few days to get the approval. The exemption from full board review will save you time اللي هو بيكون بس within few days، لأنه ما بتكون full board committee، بيكون بس one member ولا two members of the committee بس براجع your proposal and give you the approval. لكن there is no research without the approval step. حتى لو هو ما فيه أي harm you explain that in your ethical approval section في proposal أنه والله I will do no harm, I will collect no samples, I will reveal no identity and so on. هم based on these declarations that you put in your ethical consideration section بعد ذاك هم either to accept your proposal for expedited review or exemption from full board review، ولا والله لا نحن شايفين انه والله في harm هنعمل full board review. تمام. نجي لي examples. طيب examples we had an example, the previous example of the clinical trial. We said that it will be a direct harm to the patient أو أي interventional study design that involve intervention to the participants will get full board review لأنه ده يعتبر harm to the patients أو في risk عالي للharm. تمام. another example مثلا لو أنا عايز أعمل intervention لكن intervention بتاعتي هي educational programs. تمام. ده حسي كده هو برضو experimental design فيه educational programs داير والله الناس دير أعمل لهم assessment بعد ذاك أعمل لهم educational program واجي أعمل لهم تاني assessment. ده experimental صح، لكن انت in your ethical approval section هتقول والله أنا الانترفنشن بتاعتي دي have no harm to the patients, I will protect their identity وأنا I will not يعني أديهم any physical harm. الهارم الوحيد اللي كان ممكن يحصل أنه social harm through identification of the participants وده أنا ما هعمله. I will collect the data through codes for example. تمام. In this case you might get an expedited review or even a full exemption of review. تمام. Based on your study you will get your approval whether it's the full board or the expedited approval or the exemption from full board approval. تمام. طيب نجي لي a very important section called informed consent. وقبل شوية لاقتنا وين؟ نرجع لكم في history of ethical approval of history of research ethics. لاقتنا أنه since 1948 subjects قلنا should give informed voluntary consent. دي هي ذاتها يا هل informed consent انت بتديهم نبذة عن your research وأي ريسك ممكن يحصل لهم وحتعالجوا ليهم أو حتتلافاه كيف، وإن كيس أنه حصل حتعمل شنو. and you will give details about any برضو benefit of your study. وبعد ذاك انت you ask them whether to voluntarily accept to be part of your study or they can just reject of being part of your study. تمام، يعني they have the free will to either accept or reject your study أو يعني to be part of your study. يعني الانفورم consent دي بقدمها لمنو؟ بقدمها للparticipants. each participant بديه informed consent وبشرح له فيها the research process و all the risks and harms و all the benefits. وبعد ذاك I ask them whether to participate or يعني choose not to participate. تمام. So the informed consent is a process, it's not just a form. خلاص، يعني هي فعلا هي حاجة مكتوبة، عبارة عن document مكتوب فيها إقرار بالموافقة على المشاركة وكده، لكن هي أنت بتشرح فيها the full harms and the full benefits of your research. يعني هي بعد ذاك انت ما بس بتجدع للعيان تقول لي امضى، انت بتشرح له الكلام ده كله. هي process you explain your research و you introduce yourself وبتوريه all the benefits all the harms و how to deal with these harms أو لو حصل أي حاجة، وبعد ذاك you ask their approval through signature. تمام. Information must be presented to the participant or to the representative decision maker. طيب اللي هو تسأل participant تقول له والله أنا فلان وفلان داير أعمل البحث عن الحاجة الفلانية ودايرك تشارك فيه. تمام. طيب لو أنا البحث بتاعي ده عليه ICU patients وهم منومين، حاجة صح العيان أقول لها لك الله أنا دايرة اجمع الداتا بتاعتك ده عليك الله. No, in this case you will have the representative decision maker. تمام، اللي هو ده بكون الدايركت كوبيشن بتاع البيشنت. تمام، هو اللي بده يقول له والله نحن عايزين ندرس حالة ابوك مثلا وعايزين نستعمل information في الميديكال ريكوردز بتاعته ما حنكشف اي identity وما حنعمل اي حاجة and so on. تمام. in this case an informed consent will be signed from the direct decision maker. تمام. انا بعملها ليه؟ to enable that person to make a voluntary decision to participate as a research subject. أنا بشرح له كل البينيفيتس وكل الريسكس المتعلقة بما يستدي، وبعد ذاك I ask them to either participate or not، اللي هو they have the free will to either participate or not. يعني ممكن تقول له والله كان ما شاركت والله حرشتك الدكاترة مثلا. no، ما في كلام زي ده. it has to be voluntary and the participant on their own free will they choose to either accept or reject. تمام. حتى لو من فايلز، لو انت داير تشيل والله فايلات قاعد عندنا في المستشفى داير ادرسها، بتجي تضرب each الفايل ده مش بتاع مريض، تضرب للمريض حتى لو المريض ده deceased متوفي، تضرب للكوبيشن حقه تقول له أنا عايز استخدم الداتا الموجودة in these records. تمام. يعني الانفورم consent دي is a necessity. تمام for most of the researches. تمام. يلا اللهم مثلا researches on herbs ويعني plants و animals وكده ما في informed consent لأنه يعني هم أصلا ناس واعيين أو كده. تمام. لكن أي research should get the ethical approval وأي research on humans should get informed consent. okay. طيب الانفورم كونسنت ما هي قلنا a document وعبارة عن process فيها all the details about your research. طيب نيجي نشوف these contents عبارة عن شنو. لما أجي ما أنت مطلوب منك to formulate an informed consent for your study in order to sign it from each participant. تمام. بتقوم بتكتب فيها شنو. أول شي description of all the risks and the benefits of the study to the participants. بتذكر كل الريسكس وكل البنفيتس بتاعة your research عشان هم يكونوا aware. هم ما هي informed consent يعني موافقة based على information. انت أول شي بتديهم all the information about the study وما بس تديهم البنفيتس عشان تغريهم أنه يوافقوا وسكيب الريسكس. هو أهم شيء أنك توريهم all the risks involved أو can be expected مثلا in such study وبعد ذاك هم على ضوءها either to accept or reject. تمام. تاني you have to have a disclosure of appropriate alternative procedures or courses of treatment if any. يعني مثلا تقول له والله لو مثلا الصدي بتاعتك دي فيها blood sample تقوم تقول له والله أنا حاشيل منك blood sample، لكن إذا حصل لك مثلا نزيف أو حصل لك تروما في السايت أو في السامبل دي أنا هعمل لك كده، هوديك المستشفى، هعمل لك first aid، هعمل لك كده. يعني أنت بتوضح بعد ذاك all the procedures ولا all the details that can be related to the risk in the study. تمام. تاني it should contain a statement discussing the confidentiality of the records identifying the subjects. تمام. اللي هي you have to have a statement تكتب بعد ذاك بعد ما تشرح له الحاجات دي كلها والحاجات دي كلها تكون مكتوبة written in this form. خلاص. you assure their confidentiality يعني هتقول له والله your records أو أي identification أو أي identifiers that can lead to you will not be used. خلاص. حتى لو مثلا دارين تستعملوا x-ray مثلا يصطدي فيها x-ray مثلا هتقول له الاكس-راي دي will not be linked to you. ما هنكتب الاكس-راي دي بتاعت فلان الفلاني ولا كده، هنخدها without identifiers. تمام. برضو طبعا their names and their phone numbers الحاجات دي كلها will not be used. انت هتقول له والله the data او information collected from you will be coded. ما بزول هيعرف انه information دي بتاعتك انت. تمام. for research involving more than minimal risk اللي هو مثلا زي clinical trials أو زي أي يعني study experimental بالذات أو كده. an explanation about whether there is any compensation, an explanation about whether there is any medical treatments available if injury occurs. لازم توريه اللي هي زي ما قلنا لو هي فيها more than minimal risk of harm زي مثلا withdrawing blood samples هتقول له والله لو حصل لك harm أنا هعمل لك كده وكده وكده أو I will compensate you هديك التعويض الفلاني. تمام. يعني حتى لو في تعويضات مالية you should mention it in the informed consent. تمام. ولو في any medical procedures أو أي procedures that might follow for in case of any injury مثلا you should mention it in the informed consent. يعني the informed consent should have all these details. تمام. تاني it should contain the contact information of you الريسيرشر. انت ده الجيت دارت لما الداتا من البارتيسيبانتس دي او دارت تجمع منهم سامبلز او كده. في الانفورم كونسنت لازم انت you introduce yourself. اول شيء في بداية الانفورم كونسنت you should introduce yourself. انا الباحث الفلاني فلاني بعمل بحث عن الحاجة الفلانية and you start your بعد ذاك details. و at the end you mention your contacts تكتب والله دي نمرة تلفوني in case of any risk مثلا happen أو in case you change your mind وعايز to withdraw from this study contact me. لازم تحط لهم a phone number. تمام، اللي هي contact information for answers to questions about the research and the research subject's rights, whom to contact if the subject has a research related injury and so on. You have to mention the contact numbers of you أو your research team. تمام، لازم in the informed consent to have a statement indicating that the participation is completely voluntary. يعني ما يكون في أي غصب أو أي تهديد أو threat to the participants. لازم الحاجة تكون completely voluntary, and the refusal to participate will involve no penalty or no any loss of benefits. تمام، عشان ما تفيل أنهم هم threatened أن لازم يوافقوا. لا، بتقول لهم بتكتب statement أنه والله you have the free will whether to accept or reject the participation and no penalty ولا no any risk of getting any مثلا reduced benefits أو كده if you do not participate. يعني participation or not will not affect مثلا your healthcare services أو أي حاجة. تمام، and the subject may discontinue participation at any time without penalty. يعني والله هي الاستادي بتاعتنا دي cohort study مثلا لمدة 5 سنين. You should mention that أنهم they have the right to exit the study whenever they wish. يعني لازم الحاجة دي تكون completely voluntary. تمام، otherwise it will be unethical to conduct the study وما حتمشي لقدام. even if you do it no one will accept to publish it. لأنه لما انت تعمل أي study بيسألوك من الethical approval. يعني الethical approval ده section موجود في الثيسيس وموجود في البيبرز اللي هي انت بتقدمها عشان تنشرها مثلا للجورنالز. The ethical approval section is a main section in each study. تمام، و they ask if how did you get the approval or أي details. تمام، فهو is a very important part or a very important section to develop in order to get يعني to start your research. تمام، this is all about the ethics. وهو ethics طبعا is a very big title و has many sides, but ده يعني a summary of the main points in research ethics و the informed consent اللي هي the main requirement in the ethical approval. تمام، it's a document with all the details of the research process و should be explained to participants و get their signature for approving to participate in order to start your research and your data collection. In this assignment we have to write the ethical approval section and develop the informed consent for your study. تمام، we have a section called ethical approval. Just like we said, we write the details of our ethical approval steps and والله this study will have no harm to the patients ولا والله this study have the minimal harm to the patients أو كده according to your study. وأنك والله I will get all the approvals before starting my research و I will get voluntary informed consent from the participants and I will protect their identity and all the details that we just mentioned. Then you will have in the appendices اللي هو the informed consent، اللي هي قلنا عبارة عن document هي زي single page فيها all the details just like we discussed in order to be signed by each participant in order to start the يعني your data collection. تمام. you have an example of informed consent in the proposal example. That's all and good luck.